All right, welcome everybody to the University of Northern Colorado Alumni Career Panel on the topic of women in business. My name is Lindsay Crum. I'm a proud UNC Bear class of 2005 and have the privilege of serving as the Assistant Vice President for Alumni and Community Relations. And more importantly, I am excited to introduce you to some wonderful business leaders and women that I've had the privilege of getting to know, who are going to share their insight on building and sustaining careers and the perspective that they take as women leaders. I'm going to ask each of our guests to introduce themselves, share a little bit about their career story, and then we'll dive into conversation. If you're watching live, you're welcome to use the Q&A feature to list any questions you'd like our panelists to respond to. If you're watching on demand after the fact, know that we are going to be sharing bio information and opportunities to re-engage and connect with our panelists. So please continue finding ways to connect to your Bear network. With that, I'm going to turn to our first panelist. I'm going to go in the order of how I see you on my screen. Ashley, would you go first?
Yeah, so I am Ashley Valenzuela-Rician, and I'm currently the Director of Human Resources for United Site Services. I graduated from UNC back in 2011. I have 2 bachelor's degrees from UNC, one in political science and one in Mexican American studies. So I have a very, what I describe as a non-traditional career path. I originally was going to go to law school. I applied. Law school was just ridiculously expensive for me. So about that time, I decided I'm just going to be a manager. I was in retail. I'd been working, 2 jobs while I was going to school, paid my way while I was at UNC, got out pretty near, debt free, which I was very, very proud of. And I just couldn't justify doing it. About the time I did that, the University of New Mexico called me and said, "Hey, Ash, you indicated an interest in our Juris Doctorate program for law school and our dual master's program in Latin American Studies." So I got my first master's from the University of New Mexico in Latin American Studies with a legal emphasis. I had a full ride in a graduate assistantship where I kind of dabbled in HR and I loved it. Not long after that, I got into education. I was doing workforce development, particularly for the trades. I spent about 3.5 years in higher education doing HR and workforce development before I was headhunted by a commercial construction company. And they specialized in historic adaptive reuse. I was shortly promoted from HR manager to HR director, spent some more time in commercial construction, then telecom, and now I'm in commercial sanitation and what we call like commercial site services. So things like roll-off trailers, hand wash stations, things like that. Around the time that I was promoted into my first, what I call senior HR role, I decided to go back and get my second master's. So my second master's is from Regis University in human resources and strategic management, which I'm super proud of. I think this panel today is really going to highlight, the intersections of career journeys and kind of like the messiness that is life. But I think that's what makes it super exciting. So I'm very honored and happy to be here with all of you today and to kind of share my experience.
Awesome. Thanks, Ash. I'm going to turn to Candace now, if you'd introduce yourself and a little bit about your career story.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me here today. Hi, everybody. My name is Candace Morrison. I'm the only one who's not actually an alumni of UNC. I went to CSU up the road from you all, but I am a Northern Colorado born and raised native from up here. I graduated in 2014 with a degree in business management and an emphasis in supply chain with a minor in anthropology. I actually started studying HR in school and thought I hated it, so I switched to supply chain, which I love. And now I'm in HR, so you never know. Definitely explore as many opportunities as possible because you never know where your career is going to lead you. I joined Enterprise Holdings straight out of school. And I forgot to mention, I'm also a first generation student. So shout out to all my other first gens out there. It was definitely, a little bit more challenging trying to figure out some of the ins and outs of joining the professional workforce right out of school. But I'm sure UNC, just like CSU, has so many great resources. I highly recommend, utilizing those to make sure that you have a great chance of earning that awesome opportunity that you want out of school. So I started as a management trainee with Enterprise Holdings, worked my way up to an assistant branch manager and then branch manager, running my own store, managing my own business, got promoted to a larger store as a branch manager to one of our flagship locations in Longmont before I jumped over into my current role as a talent acquisition specialist on our HR team. So in my current role, I do full cycle recruiting. So I do supply chain management. I source people for our company, right? A little bit different than I ever thought, but I also deal with all of our internal internal promotions in addition to external hiring. So I'm doing some of the logistics as well. Get to, be a part of that whole process, which I absolutely love. Similar to Ashley, I kind of had to follow my passion and figure out where I wanted to be down the line. I did love management, but I realized more importantly, I love employee development. So when this opportunity opened up, I jumped on it to be able to focus on what I love. But thank you so much for having me here today. I'm excited to talk to you all.
Thank you, Candace. All right, Carrie, if you'd like to go next.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carrie Pugh. I'm a UNC graduate from back in 1997, so I've been a post-grad for quite some time. I currently am a co-founder and financial advisor for Fusion Financial Group, which is a company that is an independent financial planning practice that I own and operate in. I did graduate. I started as an accounting major. Back in my day, being an accounting major with a law degree was the ticket. That was not for me. Had a wonderful experience through the finance path. My dad was a registered rep. So I used a lot of those connections and that networking to be able to jumpstart my career. I worked for an institutional money manager out in Manhattan. I learned a lot. Started to work towards getting my various licenses to be able to sell securities, became a team lead, received my license to supervise, had my kids and looked around and thought, well, what am I doing? And I want to make more of an impact. So I began to weave my way into the client-facing side of our business instead of being on the branch management side, which I love. I love being able to really work with people and finding solutions for them to help them achieve their goals, whether that be from really robust planning, diverse investment strategies, and all of that we really feel like is built on a chassis of client education and client service as well too. So I'm very thrilled to be here, to be extending a hand out to maybe perhaps the underrepresented or younger people, especially also women in business.
Thank you, Carrie. And then our final panelist with us today is Terry. Her video is not currently working. Hopefully it'll click back in a moment, but we still have audio with Terry. If you'd go ahead and introduce yourself.
Absolutely. It's nice to be able to speak with everyone here. So I actually graduated in 1982. So I think I'm the senior group person on the panel here today. I have a music education degree, but I also took all the electronics classes that UNC had to offer at the time. And so when I graduated, I actually got a job in electronics as a technician. Spent a couple years there and then moved to a new company that was an OEM supplier primarily in the medical imaging business for x-rays. And so I was a technician, became a supervisor, became a manager, became a director, basically worked my way up to senior director. And we were supplying x-ray imaging systems to a lot of the large medical imaging companies. After 15 and a half years, I wanted to get into digital imaging, which was the next big wave in medical imaging. And so I moved to a startup company that grew out of one of the Xerox technology developments. And so I moved to Silicon Valley, and I was able to start out there as their first executive customer director. So I managed customer accounts, I sold product, and we were a startup. So I actually made our very first sale ever. And ultimately, over several years, because we were a startup, you have to wear many, many hats. I started up the product engineering group, the reliability engineering group, the customer service group. And once I would get those started up, then I would hand them off to a supervisor or a manager, and then I would move on to the next department to develop. So it was a really great experience being involved in just many facets of the business. Eventually, I became a vice president. We were spun off in the meantime into our own entity. It was kind of a unique situation because we were owned by most of the largest medical imaging companies in the world. And ultimately, we became the largest supplier of digital flat panel systems globally. The company moved from Silicon Valley to Colorado in 2010. And we continued to grow from there. As a VP, I also had a lot of things, let's say, put on me over from time to time as gaps became apparent. I did 2 different stints as HR director. I took on procurement, where I had primarily vendors in Asia and elsewhere in the world, where at the same time I had customers in Europe and elsewhere in the world. So I was really on a 24/7 schedule, if you will. And we also automated the fab, and that was under my direction as well. And so eventually, in early 2019, I chose to retire. It was perfect timing. The company had just landed the account of the only large manufacturing or the only large medical imaging company that they didn't have yet. And so essentially they were the largest and they owned the primary market share. So it was a good time for me to retire into my passion and return to music. And so I'm continuing to pursue being a jazz trumpet player, and I have my own business called Tidal Breeze Jazz Arts, and we do everything from philanthropy to marketing to providing bands and music for venues.
Wow. Let's all be Terry when we grow up. That's
Yeah, I tell you, I have to say I'm living the dream, and a lot of people say that sarcastically, but I really mean it.
I think what is inspiring and thoughtful in hearing each of you share your story, that you took your path. And a few of you mentioned that what you thought you maybe wanted to do isn't what you ended up doing. And I think one of the realities of developing a career is learning how to manage your expectations for yourself and the expectations that others put on you. So I'd love for you all to respond to how you handle that in growing your career. How have you reacted to the expectations and goals that you put for yourself? And when were you able to let go of those expectations in order to pursue the path that actually was most appealing for your career? And maybe Ash, if you want to give us a start first.
Yeah, no pressure there, right? For me, I really built time to reflect on what I wanted, why I wanted it. You know, when I talk to younger people or the folks I mentor, I think about, what I wish someone would have told me when I was kind of in that seat. Because although everyone's perspective and journey is unique and different, the desire to be happy, fulfilled, purposeful, accomplished, appreciated, all of those things, I think are kind of universal, right? And so for me, I had to put on the shelf what people thought I should be, or, maybe that version of myself that I put out to the world and said, this is who I am and this is where I'm going, and acknowledge that the journey is a part of, transformation is a part of that journey. It is a journey. It's ups, it's downs, it's on-ramps, it's tunnels. It's not this clean, linear transformation that just one day you flip a switch and you're there. And I actually think that's what makes it powerful. I think where you get lost, and myself included, is when we hold on to those old versions of ourselves out of pride, out of ego, out of, I don't want to disappoint others. And when it comes down to big ideas, that's why I make the joke about pressure, big things like who you want to be, your purpose, fulfillment. If you look back on your life, is it what you wanted it to be? Did you contribute in a way that is meaningful and that at the end of the day, you're content with? Those are super big concepts and like a lot of pressure to put on yourself. And we don't need the added pressure of other people's, perceptions, obligations, and expectations of us when it comes down to kind of what's your soul's calling. And so for me, it was really challenging myself and checking in and asking those hard questions and saying, why is that bothering me? Is it my ego? Is it my own drive? Or is it really, I'm meant to be doing something else?
That's thoughtful. Thanks, Ash. Kind of want to pop to Carrie, maybe to respond next, since as a working mother, you're also balancing the expectations that come with that. And how do you do that? What do you hold on to? What do you let go as you built your career?
I thought that Ash had a fantastic point, several different points there. I guess if I could summarize, if you consider a journey, right? We all kind of start at the bottom of that proverbial Pavlov's pyramid or triangle of needs, and it's like drinking from a fire hose. No matter, we've had interns here that we've seen gainfully move from college to a great rung on the career ladder, so to speak. It's still like drinking from a fire hydrant, and I don't know how else to prepare someone about ready to launch from college to a career. How, other than that hanging on. And I think as you move through those various different stages of understanding, I really thought this was this way, or this isn't what I assumed. Me definitely, as Ash had commented, it was definitely making sure I made my dad proud. I'm also a first generation college grad, and he was a lifelong military man. So to live under that pressure, and then knowing very, very deeply, I was not on institutional sales. I am not a natural nor great salesperson, nor does that resonate with me. Now, everything I do as an entrepreneur and a business owner and a financial, ultimately, right, we're trying to grow our firm and drive revenue, but there's different ways to go about it. And I think through mentorship, it's easy to do that. And frankly, I think the hard stop for me was being a branch manager and working so much in that fixed compliance, policy, procedure, oversight, supervision. When I had my son, there was this one moment, I was holding him, he looked at me, I looked at him, and he saw so much more and reflected so much more about me to me than I saw or realized of myself. And that was the light bulb. And I think then it was okay. I do believe when you put out energy and attention to the universe, it comes back to you. And I think I'm still trying. I think, deep down, I know my authentic self, but when you, I think, start taking those steps forward, maybe leave the standards behind, leave the pressure behind, leave the, let's just say it, fear of failure, fear of change. That's when you're really able to, I think, harness your power and grow, and that growing never stops. But knowing who you are authentically and being able to put yourself in a position or welcome things into your environment that supports that is huge. And I think that's just some of the working your way up that pyramid, so to speak.
Great, thank you. Candace, thoughts?
Tough acts to follow. I love what both of you said. Just to kind of echo off of that, Carrie, one of the things that you mentioned, that fear of change was really my biggest barrier. And actually, I just recently went through this, and I'm still kind of in a transition period, if you will. My whole goal for a very long time has been to get to what we call level 3. And it's basically more of an upper management type position. It comes with a lot of extra perks, much bigger, nicer company vehicle. It's actually a signed contract position, a whole bunch of other things, and a 6-figure salary. So that's been my goal from day one with Enterprise. I've been with the company about 8.5 years. For my position, the next step up would be a level 3 and to be managing a team of recruiters. However, in order to do that, I would have to relocate. My husband and I both are born and raised here, and we want to have a family soon as well. And so we've done a lot of soul searching in the last year or so, especially since COVID, and said, hey, all of our families here, why would we want to have a family and move away? Free childcare, right? That's a big one. All the stuff that comes along with that, and just being close to our family and our home. And so I've had to really shift my perspective, and I've done a ton of soul searching. And I've really realized that the more important thing for me is, rather than the title of the level 3, is I want to get back to a management position. I love working with a team. Right now, my position, I'm on a team technically, but it's pretty individual. I love the team atmosphere. I love the employee development. So I, put that out there, finally decided for myself, hey, here's what I want to do. And then I am communicating that and advocating for myself. Okay, here's all the things that I want. How can I get there? Can you please help me? Just put it out there. Had some really great mentors follow up with me and say, hey, here's a great opportunity that's remote. And in my mind, through the pandemic, I worked remote a little bit. I hated it. So my immediate reaction was no, absolutely not. But then she starts to explain it more and more of it really is a team atmosphere, even though we're all spread across, we are a remote team. We leave Zoom on half the day and some of us will sit in our PJs and work, but we can chat with each other. It really does still have that team mentality. And I was like, oh, okay, that's awesome. More and more she's telling me about it. I'm, realizing it's checking all the boxes for me that really matter. And it was really letting go of those things that pride, like you said, Ashley, it's that, just letting go and really soul searching and figuring out exactly what's best for you. So my goal now is to get to that position when something opens up, hopefully in the next 6 months or so. It would be a little bit of a step back in pay, unfortunately, from what I make now. However, when I go to that division in year to 3 years, I could be making much more than I am right now if I get to a supervisor position in that role. So just managing your own expectations can be very challenging, and things change throughout your life too. 3 or 4 years ago, I'd have been like, yes, let's go. I'm ready to move. I want to live on the ocean. Great. But things change. Your, personal situation might change, and let that guide your decisions down the line.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Terry, I'd like you to kind of give us some closure on this topic. You've had an amazing career and can look back on a lot of experiences and insight at different levels. When did you hold on to expectations and when did you let them go?
So I think the biggest thing for me is that throughout my entire career, I wouldn't exactly say that I've gone through transitions, but I've always taken on more and more workload. Don't always recommend that, but that's what I did. And I would always take on more workload to the point where I became sort of the shoe-in for the next promotion or the next level up, whatever it happened to be, or maybe taking on, a new department under me, that sort of thing. So those were my transitions. So I think I always put probably more pressure on myself than anyone else did, with the exception of 2 major CEOs that I worked directly for in 2 companies. So I think that was the biggest thing is I wasn't afraid to challenge myself by taking on more and more. But I will admit that I probably from time to time lost balance in my life. So I think that's something that I can convey, that's very important. I mean, especially as a woman in the workforce, I think we become very driven to do more and do better and work smarter. But I would definitely advocate work smarter, work harder, yes, but put working smarter as the higher priority. The other thing is I did have to relocate twice, although the second time was back to Colorado. So it was really a great experience being in Silicon Valley, and my husband was super supportive both directions. And so that definitely is a plus and definitely helped. The biggest transition for me was deciding when to retire. I figured I'd work another 5 to 6, maybe 8 more years. But I knew if I did that, then I would not at least be in as good of a situation to get back to trumpet, get back to music and to pursue that thing, which was really what started to drive me near the end of my career. And so I gave 10 months notice, and that was a transition in of itself. I helped a lot of people come up to speed in various things, and I still did go back and consult a little bit for a while, but that was the biggest transition. But as much as I loved my career, I loved the work, I loved the challenges, I love the people, I haven't regretted retiring for a moment. So I think that's the biggest thing, from a culmination standpoint. And now I'm probably overly busy again, but I'm loving it.
Wonderful, thank you. Listening to each of you respond, there's a few little points that I want us to explore and topics that might be a little sensitive or perhaps just pertinent to our topic or broader topic of women in business today. Terry mentioned that she took on a lot of work and she took on more work and that positioned her for the next step. But of course, when you take on work, you would hope that there's compensation. And so, there's research articles, blog posts, different industry perspectives on the gender gaps in pay and pay equity for workload. How have you faced those topics, or how have you counseled other people to address those topics? I think having Candace as a recruiter and Ashley as an HR executive is helpful in us talking about that, because we certainly want all of our students to be best positioned to be compensated equitably and fairly for the work that they do. What should a recent grad be thinking about? What should they be on the lookout for?
I could jump in there if you don't mind. So being a recruiter, I get a lot of folks during the interview process that are afraid to ask about pay. They'll kind of approach it cautiously, or phrase it, as if they're afraid to ask. And I always tell them, never, ever, ever be afraid to ask about pay. First and foremost, in Colorado, hopefully you all know we do have a pay equity law now, which is fairly recent from the last couple of years, where we are required to put the pay in the job postings, or at least a range or a band. So first of all, ask about that and ask, hey, how do I get to the top of that band? Also ask what the future looks like, what's the future career path for this position look like, and what does the pay increase look like from there. If you are negotiating, if you receive an offer and you come back and want to ask for more pay, or always think about the total benefits that come along with that as well. And Ashley will probably be able to speak to that a little bit better than I can about total benefits packages and all that great stuff. But if you're coming back with that topic in mind, make it more about, do a little research first to figure out what the average pay is for that position. So you have an idea, make sure you're not asking for way too much or way too little. But when you present it, make it really about your skills and why they're worth that much. Hey, based off of my specific experience that we talked about during the interview process, I believe that I am worth this amount of pay, and the average is this. What can you do for me? And just kind of leave it at that.
Yeah, I'd like to build on that just a little bit. I think it's important to think about compensation, both numerically, but also kind of those intangibles. So Candace mentioned the total package, what we would call total rewards. That's essential, but also if you're looking for experience, exposure, mentorship, room to grow, sometimes that requires you to look at the numbers and say, hey, maybe the money is not my ideal goal yet, but all of these other things are on the table. And if I can put those checks down, then I can go ahead and look at other opportunities in the future that I'm going to be ready to come in and, basically kick butt and take names. I have experienced a lot of folks that I mentor kind of take a step back. And I think Candace even mentioned, she's talking about pay. There's a job she could take that would be more money, that would be in a manager capacity, but she's willing to kind of go a different route, maybe even take less pay, because it's going to give her all of those other things she values, while also giving her the experience to kind of round out her career to get her ready for that next level. So I think a lot of times folks come in with this idea that it's just about the numbers, but it's so much more than that. And I don't want to downplay the importance of equal pay, pay transparency, knowing your numbers, doing your research. I think all of that advice is great advice, and you should take it. But I also think it's about going into an opportunity and looking at it as a true opportunity versus a transaction, right? Because if you go in with a transactional mindset and you're just chasing dollars, ultimately that's not going to amount to career happiness, fulfillment, mentorship, growth, any of these other things that are essential to basically get you to that next level. And in my experience, my own personal experience, success follows that, happiness, that passion, that well-roundedness. And the only way you can get that is to kind of get your hands dirty and throw a few elbows. And that doesn't always come with that ideal salary and title that you want right out of the gate.
Great, thank you. Harry, would you like to add to that? I mean, you're a business owner, so you have probably a different or unique perspective.
Well, I work in financial services, obviously. So we have we skew about age 55 and older, predominantly men. Women, for whatever given reason, we cannot seem to get off the 20% mark of our position or our part of the financial services industry. So kind of touching back on a couple of the previous points that were made, I really can't encourage, especially women, to be very secure and understanding that you have worth and value. Our interns, when we brought them in, it's what do you want? And I don't think they understand how to, well, what do you, no, that's not the answer. I want to understand how you see your value. If you were my babysitter and I was paying you $12 an hour, now you're going to work in my office. What is that differential? What does that mean for you? And I feel like as women, we have a little bit of a hard time asserting that kind of information. And I don't think within reason, especially if you've done your research, as the other panelists have really kind of encouraged, I don't think that there is a reason to come to that table unprepared. I agree, it is not all about money. Culture is something, we're a small business, how do we compete with someone who has stars in their eyes and want to go to the big city? But maybe a small office fit is the right thing. And I would love to see more people try to come into our business. It's incredibly expensive, so it makes it a lot easier for them to start with bigger firms. Why we can't seem to get off the mark, I don't know. I love men. My biggest supporters are men. I carry a lot of licenses. I have a lot of experience. I have my CFP marks. I'm at a certain level as we get measured by success of production, and I can still go with all my fancy tags and ribbons at a conference and sit down at a table of men, and I will not be acknowledged or spoken to. I think it took me a few different tries of wondering what to do or why don't they talk to me. And in my world, it just started to be, okay, if they're not going to talk to me, I'm just going to start talking to them. And hi, I'm Carrie, and completely, putting myself in the situation, asserting myself versus waiting to be welcomed. And I really want women, and I feel like with the younger generation of men, it's maybe not as fixed, but I just encourage women to continue to just assert yourself or place yourself into the conversation. Ask for what you want, ask for what you're looking for. Don't just wait. Don't wait.
There's a lot to unpack there as I'm looking at facial reactions. I think perhaps we all can empathize with that feeling of maybe being a bit on the outside, and how do you assert yourself? And that perhaps is easier said than done as you've gained the experience and developed the skills to be assertive. But how might some of you, and maybe Terry, this is a great question for you, looking back on your career, knowing what you know now, what are 2 specific things that you can tell a recent graduate to help them feel comfortable and confident asserting themselves in a professional space?
Okay, so before I answer that, I want to make 2 comments. One is to build on what Ashley said about pay and the whole package. I would add that the title is part of that as well. And when I moved from one company to another, when I moved to Silicon Valley, I actually took a significantly lower title, but it paid more. So my thought at that point was that there's a whole lot more upward mobility potential there. And so I didn't get hung up on the title. And so that might help you, Candace, as well in your level 3 conversation. The titles, to some people they have meaning, and certainly in a corporate setting, there's value in a title, clout, whatever you want to call it. But the opportunity that a position brings can sometimes be more important than the title in of itself. So don't get hung up on that. The other thing I wanted to build on was something that Carrie said, and that really relates to I guess it kind of feeds into the question as well. But when you said that you started just going up to people and asserting yourself and bringing your own self into the conversation, I think that's really key no matter what. So whether you're a new grad, whether you're in a new position, a new company, whatever it may be, if you sort of are the wallflower, you're probably not going to get noticed. And of course, women always have to deal with that difference between assertiveness and aggressiveness. And there definitely is a fine line, and it can be different depending on the culture of the company that you're in. So I would always advocate assertiveness. I would very rarely, if ever, advocate aggressiveness. And you have to find that fine line for yourself. But I think that being assertive in terms of knowing what you want, knowing how to explain what you want and why, and always have a rationale that you can defend, not defensively, but that you can make a case for. I think that will really help. And just being friendly too. I mean, I was in an work environment for a short period of time that was pretty adversarial. And hey, I can go to the mat with the best of them, but that's not how I choose to want to be. And so I think being friendly, being helpful, looking for mentors, and also being a mentor really helps as well. So you begin to have a group that looks to you as a leader, that you can look to as mentors. And it doesn't have to always be women. It's nice to be able to advocate for other women and pull other women along. But, you know, whether it's a man or a woman, you know, you can develop this group of resources where everyone helps each other out.
Thank you. A few of you actually mentioned mentors, whether in your introduction or in some of your remarks. How does a student or a recent graduate identify a mentor, develop a relationship with a mentor? What is a mentor? Maybe we start there, recognizing that some of our students and recent graduates don't know what that means in a workplace setting. Can you talk a little bit about that? And maybe Candace, if you'd like to go first.
Sure. Yeah, I want to start out by saying, you know, there's different types of mentors. And I think that you need those different types for different situations. And for me personally, those mentors have changed, or relationships have changed over the years. But, you know, one type of mentor is going to be like an advocate. Somebody that's your cheerleader. You know, if you are going for a promotion or whatever, they're the person that's in the manager's ear going, oh, you need to hire Candace. She's awesome. And here's why, right? I also have a mentor that will kick me in the butt when I need it. If I'm being really, really negative, feeling like, you know, the world is against me, whatever, I call them up. I know they're going to kick me in the butt and tell me, hey, change your attitude. It's not that bad. You got this. Awesome, right? I've got my mentors that have kind of pushed me outside my comfort zone. I actually got into talent acquisition because the last talent acquisition specialist handpicked me and said, hey, I think you'd be really great at this. And I was like, whoa, I've never thought about this at all. Like, what? You know, you kind of have to go through that process. Trying to think of others, you know, mentors that just teach and coach you in general. And I think earlier in your career, I think that might be the most important type. Somebody that you can feel comfortable going to, asking questions. If you make a mistake, you know, hey, help me fix this. What do I do? That might be the most important right off the bat, I think. And how to identify those people, you know, who are you comfortable with, right? That's step one. Who do you feel like you could go to in those situations? And they have to be willing to as well. That's kind of the second part. So just ask, you know, hey, You know, maybe it's a manager. That's typically tends to be a more natural one right off the bat. May not be your direct manager, but maybe somebody in your chain of command that you work with day to day, knows how to do the job that you're doing. They can teach you and you feel comfortable asking them questions. And it's okay to ask them, like, if let's say they get promoted and move on somewhere else, hey, can we still stay in contact? I'd really love to continue to learn from you. Most of the time they're going to say yes, right? There might be those few instances where they just feel like they have way too much on their plate, or they don't feel like it's relevant to what they're working on. And that's okay, right? At the end of the day, we can't always get what we want, but most of the time I found it throughout my career, anytime I ask for any advice or help or anything like that, people are more than willing to help most of the time.
Great, thank you. Ash, thoughts on that?
Yeah, something that I think is really important when you pick mentors is diversity of mentorship. So Candace did a great job building out different types of mentors. But I think a lot of times when people think about a mentor, they think of someone who directly aligns to their career goals or is in the profession they want. Some of the best mentors I've had in my career have been people who have nothing to do with HR, organizational leadership, Latin American studies. I mean, one of my mentors to this day is a retired engineer. And he gave me some of the best advice early on in my career about accountability, not making excuses, working smarter, efficiencies, right? Like one of the things that he really taught me was this idea of asking yourself, what are you trying to accomplish if you do that? You know what I mean? Think about what you're trying to accomplish, what your goal is what you're proposing or the action you're considering going to get you there? If the answer is no, don't do it. And that seems very simple, but when you're starting in your career and you're navigating corporate politics, you know, social cues, all of these things, it's a lot. And sometimes you just kind of need that navigator. I also have a great mentor who's an industrial health and safety subject matter expert. He was global. I mean, worked for a publicly traded company. And to this day, he still has a vested interest in my well-being as, you know, an HR leader. Completely different roles, completely different genders, huge age difference, but took an interest in me early on in my career as a person. So I think that's the other thing. And Candace mentioned, you know, this accountability, this kind of challenging in a constructive way. But there's a balance between those who want to like move you along on your career path because, you know, they work with you, they benefit, look, so-and-so got promoted, maybe they're a colleague or a peer, versus someone who's innately interested in you as a person. I mean, and we started this conversation talking about, you know, kind of our soul's desire, what the universe has ordained, how you kind of manifest that. There are people that I believe the universe puts in your path to help kind of walk alongside you and take a real personal interest in you outside of career. Like when we were talking about balance, and I think Terry did a great job of it, right? You're going to have trade-offs. You're going to have tough decisions. Sometimes you can't have both things. So having someone there who really cares about your mental, emotional, physical well-being, the holistic version of you outside of just career, I think is essential.
Wonderful, thank you.
Well said.
Terry, any thoughts to add to the mentor matching or development process?
Yeah, I mean, Ashley just really summed it up very well. I'll just maybe just share one anecdote, and that was actually before I even started college. And I had a good friend that said, you know, keep playing trumpet. If you want to get a music degree, get a music degree, but you love science and you get good grades, so get a science degree too. And I guess I'm pretty happy with, I did get the music degree. I waited to go back to engineering, but that's one of those people that Ashley was describing that really, you know, really innately cared about the path I took. I didn't follow it to the letter, but I didn't give up on either goal. And so that really, you know, in the long run led me to my full career path. I guess the other thing I would add just about mentors is you can learn from people that are in a so-called lower position than you as well. So don't overlook colleagues and others in the company or in your environment, because you know, they may be less experienced, they may have you know, different career paths ahead of them, but you can learn a lot from them. And when I was first a supervisor and I tell you, I was like 23 and I was 23 and I had 23 people working for me between the ages of 18 and 45. And I learned so much from all of them. I mean, it was just invaluable. So, don't overlook that resource as well.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm going to ask Carrie to close out the topic of mentors, in part because, Carrie, I know that you are really passionate about mentoring and helping lift people up. Can you provide the perspective of a mentor? What should if somebody's looking to have a mentor, how should they approach a potential mentor? What would that relationship initiation look like?
We've had a variety of different ways that folks have connected with us. I've also reached out proactively to make mentoree connections as well too. I would say that that's, it should be, a trusted relationship where the mentoree can be, or mentee can be themselves, a safe place. One of the panelists had mentioned a safe place, non-judgment zone. Oops, I made a mistake. How do I fix that? or where they can be, they know that the conversation is private. We typically have had people send their near college grads to speak with us. I've actually had UNC students reach out to me from doing panels like this. I think there's a great alumni directory where they've asked to just speak, and I think being polite about it. I find that to be, especially from young people in our industry, I really like the proactive engagement, and usually I do very strongly believe in supporting the underrepresented and young people in my business. And I will, generally speaking, will carve out that time and will make that time to at least have a call or welcome them to connect on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to do that. I do believe that, if more people were generous, right? We just need to share that generosity with our young people. And someone gave me that hand when I really needed it. And it is really a privilege to be able to do the same, for someone else.
Wonderful, thank you. We have about 10 minutes left. Oh, Terry, you'd like to add something?
Oh, just one thing, and that is that in your own role as a mentor, be willing to train someone else to do your job. So many times people are afraid to let go. They want to keep things close to their vest, and they want to stay safe or avoid the risk of somebody taking their position. But if you want to be upwardly mobile, you need to be willing to train others and bring other people, share your knowledge with them. And I think that actually can, sure, it can backfire once in a while, who knows? But I think by and large, that really helps you to be ready for your next position, and you have somebody to backfill your tasks or your role. And so I wouldn't overlook that either.
Great, thank you. We have a few minutes left before we end today's conversation. And so I'd like each of you to think about one piece of closing advice that you would like to pass on to our UNC students and recent graduates. It could be about a topic that we've discussed today. It could be about something different, but recognizing that we have a lot of students who are first in their family to go to college, perhaps first in their family to enter the profession that they're pursuing, and knowing what you know now. What would you like to share with them that you think will help them be successful as they graduate and begin their careers after UNC? I'd actually like Terry to start, since we had you do introductions last. We'll do reverse order. So Terry, if you please share with us your closing piece of advice for our students and recent graduates.
Okay, so the first thing I would say is don't sell yourself short. No matter what other people tell you, no matter what you may even sometimes tell yourself, get over that and don't sell yourself short. The second thing would be that definitely ask for the right amount of money and know your value, but don't take a job just for the money. Take it for all the other more important things, whether it's passion, whether it's experience, whether it's just something you love to do. Because in the long run, you know, this is your life and it's not all about money.
Yeah. Thank you. Carrie, how about you?
I think how I looked at it was when you graduate from college, you have the first job. It's almost like I'm here. And it really is so much more of a journey versus just getting a handle on that first rung, and to give yourself some grace that sometimes the first time isn't the right fit, and that you keep progressing. And some of that also is plan for this transition. It's a big deal. It's a really big deal. And if you can have a plan in place, what are my next steps? What are the first things I'm going to do in the first 30 days? You know, what are my goals, where you can really have that vision ahead. And you know, you had asked me earlier, and I really didn't think I directly answered your question about being a working mom as well too. And something that resonated with me when I have really hard days, you know, had a great day at work and forgot the orange slices for the soccer team, and vice versa. Back when my son was a baby, I started doing the P90X workouts at like 4:30 in the mornings. That's the only time I had time. And two lines that I still stand by to this day, and my son's 15, is do your best and forget the rest, and just keep pressing play.
Great. Thank you. Candace.
Yeah, so for me, it's a couple of things. First of all, it's just put yourself out there. It's scary, right? It's scary networking. It's scary going to career fairs. It's scary going into interviews, but put yourself out there, you know, and keep your mind open when you're looking at career opportunities. You know, when I told my mom I was going to go work for Enterprise right out of school, she's like, you're the first person to get a degree and you're going to go rent cars. What are you doing? Like, you know, but I had learned all the amazing opportunities and the training and growth and development and all these things that I was looking for. So really just keep your mind open and stick to your values with what you're, you know, exploring for your career opportunities, and be humble. Something that I learned early on in my career is, you know, hey, like you said, you know, I'm here, I did it, I got to that first rung, but I had so much to learn and I was afraid to ask for help right away. Please do not ever hesitate to ask for help or advice or anything like that. You know, be humble, but sorry, I had one last thought and I forgot it. But yeah, just overall, just be true to yourself. You know, when you're going through the interview process as well, you know, especially in my field, you're interviewing the companies just as much as they're interviewing you. So make sure that they check all the boxes that you need, but also keep in mind that every job might have something you don't love. You know, there were days where I was running a branch and washing my 10th car in a row because my car washer called in sick, sopping wet feet in a 20-degree day, you know, running around outside in the snow. And I'm thinking, what the heck am I doing with my life? You know, they're going to have bad days. There are bad things in every job. Can you live with those bad things? And more importantly, what's the big picture long term? And that's what got me through those hard days, is just thinking about, hey, this is what I want in my future. I know I can get there if I just get through this bad day. And, you know, there's going to be better days and it's going to be great.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Ash.
So many good answers. I would say be brave, right? Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to say you don't know. It's okay to try new things. Failure is the ugly part of success that nobody talks about. I mean, when we look at our mentors, we look at the people that we aspire to be, what they don't put in the headlines is that those people have tried 100 different times and fallen down those 100 different times. And it was on try 101 that they were successful. And that's the one that everyone sees. So I just, you know, be brave, be willing to fail, be willing to have tough conversations, being honest and true to yourself. Everyone's talking about being authentic and genuine, and really challenging yourself to be that best version of yourself requires you to be brave. I would say that also means that you kind of have to go into it with some grit, being willing to constructively disrupt, right? To be yourself, to really write your own path, to be in an organization that maybe isn't 100% what you were looking for, but not letting that hold back your career aspirations requires you to have some grit and tenacity. And then the last thing I would say is really have some faith, right? Whether that's in the universe, whether that's in yourself, however you want to interpret that statement. I think knowing that tomorrow's another day to try again is super refreshing. It's okay if you didn't do it today. And it's okay if in a year you didn't hit every single goal. And it's okay if you had a bad day at home or a bad day at work, or the kids are hard or your partner's hard. That's all okay. You get to do it again tomorrow. You get to try again. And approaching your career journey is just like one little chapter of the big book of life that you get to write, but you get one chance at writing it. You get one chance to do it. So my kind of philosophy on that is make it the best book and the best chapter you can come up with, and make it full of adventure and challenge and good stories. And yeah, there's going to be ups and downs, but that's what makes the story interesting. And that's what makes it uniquely yours. Embrace that.
Wonderful. Thank you. What a positive way to say the conclusion. But Terry, you want to add something to close out?
Well, I was just going to say that was an excellent summary, Ashley.
Thank you.
So, but I can say, don't let yourself get pigeonholed either. So, just to build on the fact that, there are work situations that that are tolerable because they fit within our bigger picture and our longer term goals. But if you do end up in a situation that is not tolerable, don't be afraid to jump ship. So it gets back to really knowing who you are, knowing what you want to accomplish, and not necessarily knowing how you're going to get there, but always keep striving.
Indeed. And I think we should all take that expertise and perspective with a lot of weight, because Terry certainly forged an amazing career, and one that has a lot that we can aspire to. I want to just thank all of you for sharing your time and perspective this afternoon. A lot of what you said resonated with me personally. I'm sure that folks listening, it resonated with them as well. Anyone that is listening live or watching this later, I'd encourage you to, reach out through the UNC Alumni Network, connect with the Career Center, connect with the advising offices in your college, connect with the alumni office. We are here to help you be successful. And if you want to reach out to one of these panelists individually or other former panelists for Alumni Career Panel Series, please let us know. They are wonderful experts, individuals that want to help you be successful, want to help you put your network to work. Or maybe you want to pursue the career that they're pursuing. Please don't be scared to put yourself out there and ask for a connection or assistance. I want to just thank you all one more time for everything that you shared today. I know that I'll be seeing many of you at different events coming up over the next few weeks, and very, very appreciative of your commitment to UNC and the success of our students. With that, I'll say goodbye, but I hope you can all join me in saying go Bears. And just thank you for a wonderful conversation this afternoon. And I know that I will be talking with all of you very soon. All right, bye and go Bears.
Go Bears.
Thank you.